Hi, I'm Chuck Gibson. This is Taking Stock with Art Jarvis, a bi-weekly discussion of what is happening in the economy, the world of finance, and personal investment with Art Jarvis. Taking Stock with Art Jarvis is a presentation of Loveland Beacon in partnership with Jarvis Global Investments, LLC. Now here is Taking Stock. Well, welcome back, Art Jarvis, to another edition of Taking Stock.
Good to be here. Good to see you again.
It's good to have you back for another edition. And I told you, before we went on the air, specifically, I said we're going to fly a little free today. So the first question to you is, what do you want to tell us about our economy today?
I think the big thing that's going on right now is a complete lack of clarity. We have talked a lot about fear and greed, right?
Yeah.
And we were deep into the fear last year, worried about a recession and the impact of high inflation and things like that. We kind of started working our way out of that trough, and it felt like we were moving back up, and we weren't to the greed phase yet, but people were seemingly getting a little more positive that we were getting toward the end of this raising of interest rate cycle. And but here over the last month, well, actually since the end of August, the markets have actually lost about 6.5%, and that's before today, which is Tuesday, the 26th.
I know we looked at some early numbers, before we started talking. And the Dow's just right now it's down a little bit.
We're down 1% today.
Yeah.
So you had Fed Chairman Powell come out last week, and they had the Federal Open Market Committee met, and the general consensus, probably about 95% of the people, felt that they would not raise interest rates last week. Well, they did not raise interest rates next week, so that theoretically that's at least a neutral. That we got what we were looking for. But then he also came out and said, we're going to at least raise rates one more time this year. So, somewhere either
October, November, December, that's all we have left.
And there's no meeting in October, so it's either going to be November 1st or December 13th, I think, is the other meeting that, hey, we're going to raise rates again. Well, the market didn't like that. We're in that hope phase that we're getting close to the end of this, and they're still trying to negotiate that soft landing in the economy.
I'm glad you said that, because what was in the back of my mind to talk about a little bit is, so with this change, just over the last week, since there wasn't an increase in the rates, so are we still on track, or are we still saying, hey, soft landing?
At the moment, we're still on track. I mean, near as I can tell, we're still having this. He's raising rates and he's beating the economy down. And when I say he, I'm talking about Fed Chairman Powell. But we're always placing our bets on where we think the economy and things are going to be 6, 12, 18 months from now, right? We're investing based on what the present value, what we believe the present value is, where we're going to be in the future, right? So
right.
Where are we going to be in the future? That's the big question, and I still say there's nothing out there screaming saying we're heading into a recession anytime soon. I still say that, but you're starting to see little things, like consumer confidence. We've talked about that before. Consumer is 70% of gross domestic product. That's, this morning they came out with the consumer confidence number, and it was in the low 100s, which not only was a downgrade, but it also was a little bit worse than expected. So that's why we're down 1% in the market today.
Ouch.
But again, like my statement at the very beginning was, we lack clarity. So when you look at consumer expectations, which is trying to look forward, well, sure, consumer expectations have gone down because, number one, you've had oil prices go up. You've got everything that's going on with the United Auto Workers and things like that, the striking and things. We always use the cheeseburger analogy. The cost of a cheeseburger is not getting any cheaper. Matter of fact, it's getting more expensive.
Well, and bringing that cheeseburger home in a new car is going to get more expensive too.
No doubt. I mean, very much so. So, you start looking, okay, if I can't afford a brand new car, I guess I'm going to have to start looking at certain things like AutoZone or something that's going to work on the used cars, right?
Right.
And I'm going to keep my 10-year-old car running a little bit longer as opposed to go buy a new car. That's all that puts pressure on the markets. But, the consumer sees these kind of things, and the consumer has to make decisions.
Right.
Am I going to hunker down and I'm just going to buy and do the things I have to do, or is there some wiggle room in there for me to go out and buy my quotation mark toys or whatever?
Well, the consumer confidence discussion that we're having right now takes us two places. Hopefully, I'll remember to talk about both of them. But the first thing I want to ask. For the people listening, some know more than others. I'm one of those who knows less than others. But on this, so consumer confidence, what are the standards of measure that go into play for, this rating? Like you said, it's in the low hundreds or whatever right now. What are the things that they're looking at that, are the standards of measure for saying, okay, this is where our consumer confidence level is based on?
Yeah, it's a little bit more wishy-washy kind of things, right? Sure. It's not, how much did you spend on, food last month. It's how do you feel kind of questions, How do you feel things are going to be next month? How do you feel things are going to be in 6 months? What are your intentions during those things? Do you expect to spend less? Do you expect to spend more? Are you going to buy a house? Are you going to buy a car? Yes, no. It's those kind of, how does the consumer feel, and based on their feelings, how do they at this moment in time, how do they feel that they are going to act?
So those standards of measure come from, surveys or polls that are conducted by the pollsters.
Yeah, if you ever get a thing on your phone, if it's a legit one anyway, they call you and say, we're doing a survey for blah blah blah. That's that's part of it.
I barely answer phone calls on my phone, let alone But
I'm embarrassed to admit I have a home phone. Number one, and number two, I never answer my home phone because every single time it rings, it's a sales call, right, or something.
Well, that was the purpose of a landline at the end for me, was just so if the landline rang, I know that's those guys, and I'm not answering it. Yeah. People who need to talk with me, they have my cell phone number.
That's right.
Of course, that's changed. But anyway, which leads us to the other part, and I didn't want to forget. So the idea, and again, kind of recapping. So consumer confidence numbers that are reported by, whatever administration reports those. Maybe who is that?
It's still the Bureau of Economics.
Okay, so the Bureau of Economics, and they're getting those numbers from basically polling, and which is really amazing. I would never have thought the answer was going to be, how do you feel?
Right, and then you're in trouble. As soon as you ask that question, you're in trouble.
I don't feel very good.
I'm not feeling good about this.
But then the second thing, which I really wanted to throw into the discussion, and that leads to it, I think. It's a good transition. Again, so consumer confidence, what are the parameters? And then two, consumer confidence speaks directly to the consumer's behavior. Now, what did you call that?
In general, from
behavioral
finance.
Yeah, behavioral finance.
Which I always say they need to teach a lot more behavioral finance in school than what they do.
Well, what's the number one lesson? So if you're Professor Jarvis at the Harvard, business school. It's got a name, I'm sure. I just call it the Harvard Business School.
Yeah, I have no idea. They won't even let me on campus.
Well, yeah, but now you're a professor there.
Oh, am I?
Today you are Professor Jarvis at the Harvard Business School, which, like I said, the name escapes me for the moment. And obviously, I didn't go there.
So I get a sweatshirt. That's all I want to know.
Right. I went to Harvard. I did go to Harvard.
Did you?
Yes. Yeah. I visited while I was there in the area, and I went to Harvard.
So I
like to tell people that.
That's right.
But anyway, so you're Professor Jarvis. So what's the first lesson in that behavioral finance? What is that?
Oh my gosh, what's the first
I'm putting you on
lesson?
the spot,
Well,
Professor.
Here's lesson number one. Us as humans will make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And that's the one part, even like if I'm looking at investing like from a contrarian standpoint, I know that people as a group will capitulate one way or the other at the exact wrong time, right? They will either get very, very greedy and want the fear of missing out on something, and they'll get in at the very worst time. And then it's the same thing. They'll take a certain amount of pain, and they're willing to accept it. It's painful. I can't take it anymore. I'm out. Well, guess what? The problem is pretty much when you see that where people go, that's it. I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I can't take it anymore. I'm out. That's pretty close to the bottom.
That's too late.
So there's rule number one. That's what I live by, and that's a lot of from a contrarian standpoint how I invest. It's like I always say to people, if everyone's on this side of the boat, I want to be on the other side of the boat. Because if everyone's already on the other side of the boat, that means they're all probably wrong, and they're too late anyway, right? I want to be over here.
That's what's coming.
Yeah, what's coming exactly. So
that's the hardest thing. Is the prediction. And so, which is why I think the behavioral finance shows that how we behave is, as you said, capitulating too late. Everybody's saying this is the way to go. Well, you know what? They're right. And you jump in. Well, that trend has been identified as a trend, then it's too late.
Everybody's talked about it. It's in every magazine and every news story, and it's like, well, okay. If everybody already knows about it, it's over with.
And when the wound is bleeding, and you're just at the last few drops of blood, it's too late. You bled out.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it.
It's like too late to get in, but you get in anyway, and then now it's crashing, or the wound is bleeding, and I love those analogies.
And the thing is, and don't get me, it's not easy. It's not easy investing from a contrarian standpoint, but if it's that painful and it's that ugly and everybody seems to know about it, you should be doing the opposite. There's I'm not even going to get it right, but there's a wonderful line in like It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
Mr. Potter, he's not saving you. He's buying at a discount, right? Well, that's exactly what. Unless it's a situation where like it's the financial crisis from 2008, we were completely out of whack. All the numbers were bad, the ratios were bad, and things like that. That was the time to hunker down, and it showed. It ended up taking 15 months for us to drop 55%. But that's not where we are today. Okay, so if stocks are down 6% in the last 2 months or so, we had negative 20-something% last year. Depending where you are in your life, it's a buying opportunity, right? So unless there's some kind of sign that this economy is about to go down the drain, you should be buying, right? You should need to stick, and again, we've talked about this before, you got to stick with the plan.
See, my mind initially, this is the perfect example of what you were talking about. So you said, in the last few months or so, stocks are down 6%. And my mind goes to, I need to get out.
Yeah.
It's dropping. Well, if I already lost 6%, I'm a little late. Getting out. But so the perfect example is shock to Chuck. Professor Jarvis says, if they're showing, they're dropping. Now's the time to get in, because you're buying basically at a 6% discount or whatever. Continues.
Definitely. And that's the beautiful part.
And it's going to rise.
That it always. Well, I hate to say this, but it always does.
Well, what are the signs? Well, no, you know what? And you've been doing this for how many years now? 30 plus?
35 plus. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's something to that. But, assuming success has been your clients have done well, which that's what we know,
Right.
So we don't bring your clients on to tell that, but that's their story.
You're not even allowed to.
I know, there you go.
not allowed to do
they all say, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Got a lot of rules.
But bottom line is, there's you're in the business for 35 plus years is because you helping people.
Sure. I mean, go back 35 years. So you go back 1987 was, was it Black Monday, Black Friday, when it dropped 23% in one day. You go to the Gulf War, you go to the international stocks that dropped in the mid-90s, you go to the dot-com bubble at the beginning of the millennium, you have 9/11, you have the financial crisis of 2008, then you've got almost 10 years where we were just basically rock and rolled. We were basically just basically making 12-13% a year on average. And then we hit COVID. We hit that pandemic. Well, in spite of all those bad things, the U.S. stock market still basically makes 9 or 10% per year, in spite of all those negative things. So, if you're getting out when it's down, you're about to miss out on that a better than average time frame where that gets us back up to that 9 or 10% on average.
Well, what are the indicators? So, like I said, my mindset was we've been losing, we've lost 6%. Maybe I should get out.
Yeah.
Now's the time to get out. Well, as an uninformed investor, or whatever, uneducated would be the better way to say that, not uninformed. But you say no, buy, and that makes sense. It's buy low, so it's dropped 6%. I can get in at essentially a 6% discount.
Right.
But again, you threw in that caveat of, as long as there's nothing that says it's not going to rebound.
Right.
So what are some of the indicators? This isn't folks. This is not an exact science, and Art Jarvis is not telling you this is what you should do.
That's right.
Again, find a professional
right.
and consult him on your own personal finances. We throw in the disclaimer here. But again, the question still remains, Professor Jarvis, I love that. So Professor Jarvis, what are some of the indicators you're looking for if you're thinking, okay, it's dropped a little bit, now's a good time for me to buy? But wait a minute, let me make sure that there's not a sign. So what are some of the signs that would say, hey, wait a minute, it's not good, it's going to continue to drop, and this isn't the best time to
and there's a lot of things. I mean, if you look at, let's start with interest rates. Where are we from an interest rate standpoint? As interest rates rise, that puts pressure on what we call the market multiple.
Right.
So that market multiple is that times whatever the earnings are. So, if we are getting continue to get a substantial rise in interest rates, which I don't believe we are going to continue to get a substantial rise, then that's going to put pressure on where the market can go. Okay, so I'm looking at that from at least a neutral standpoint, and we got to be getting close to him stopping, or the Fed Reserve stopping to raise interest rates. And then you multiply that against the forward projected earnings. Well, our forward projected earnings continue to rise. So now you've got earnings. So you've got, let's say, stable interest rates maybe, and then against earnings that are rising. So if you're looking forward, then I should be looking at a higher market. Well, what's going to cause the earnings in those things to continue to rise? Well, big thing is the consumer. So I'm looking at the consumer. I'm looking at what they're spending. I'm looking at what their expectations are. Where's inflation? So what's their ability? So inflation has greatly improved from last year. That doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
And if we're still at 4%, that's higher than the 2%.
Well, we're still inflating.
Well, the price of a cheeseburger is still going up, even though we're not at 9% inflation. Now we're at 4% inflation. Well, guess what? All that means is prices are still going up 4%.
Right.
But you have the inflation has gotten better, and we talk about that a lot. I'm not saying stuff is great, but is it better than it was? Yes. Unemployment still looks good. You start to look at, I'm forgetting when. Gross domestic product. Gross domestic product numbers have been better than expected. So you look at those things, and if I'm trying to compare where we are today compared to like 2008 in the financial crisis, those numbers that we're looking at in 2008 were way worse and getting more worse, if that's the way to say it. Worser. They're getting more worse than.
I'm not saying that. I'm just letting you go.
I'm a finance guy.
I'll give you as much rope as you need.
I'm not an English major. I'll admit that every single time.
You were good to say In 2008, they were much worse.
Much worse.
And only going to get worse.
There you go.
Still.
Right.
So something throw that still on there and you're good to go.
So something had to pop, right?
I'm with you.
So that's nowhere near where we are right now. Is everything great right now?
And the mortgage bubble's what popped.
Yeah, exactly. And precisely. I mean, that's where the big trouble was, right? We were making loans to people we should never even thought once about giving loans to. So, and then the way they were structured, that's another hour on the.
Well, let me just throw. We're going to take a side tangent just for a second. Loans to people should never have gotten loans, and essentially, they were paying them somewhat. Mm-hmm. It's like until they started getting called.
That's right.
Because they had some of those funky loans, like what we could call it.
Well, you take those loans and you bundle them into these products that Wall Street creates, right?
I gotcha.
And collateralized mortgage agreements and things like that. Well, the problem is when those burst, it gets ugly, and it gets ugly fast, right?
So something really did happen. It wasn't just like there was a little bit of a panic in the, let's say, banking industry that said we need to start calling these. Mm-hmm. Because to me, it's like if they didn't call them, nobody would have really been in trouble. Mm-hmm. I remember I talk about behavioral finance or watching the consumer's behavior, not behavioral finance, but just watching what's happening. Mm-hmm. I lived in a community at the time, here in Loveland area, that was fairly wealthy neighborhood, good size homes, and I scratched my head for years while I was living there, saying, how is this like 23-year-old fresh out of college buying this house? Mm-hmm. So anyway, 2008 comes.
Yep.
And I mean, and I would walk, I'd walk the neighborhood at night, just a little exercise, just walk out there besides the other things I do. And when that happened, the for sale signs went from like there were no homes for sale in that development. And then boom, like I'll never forget, one night I walked, there were 17 homes for sale.
Right.
And I could tell you right now, and I'm not trying to knock them, but it was all the 23 and 24 and 25-year-olds.
Right. Overextended.
That probably, and it's overextended. And as you said, should never have been lent, never have been given that mortgage. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even, and it's not a criticism against them. It shouldn't have been done to them.
I agree. Right.
Right?
Yeah, if you're going to give me something and you're going to give it, and I want something, you're going to give it to me, I'll take it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to give me the loan, I'll take the loan, right? Yeah. If I can have a home, then why wouldn't I? And of course back then we have the beauty of hindsight now.
Sure.
At the time you're living it, it's like, hey, we're giving people homes, and all that. Someone buys a home, that's good for the economy.
It's a very positive message.
Yeah, until it's not.
The American dream.
Yeah.
House and car and a pot with chicken soup or whatever.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, exactly right. So I guess my point was this is completely different right now.
Sure.
Okay, and this is not April of 2009 to January of 2020. Those were good times. There was a couple little speed bumps in there: China, Brexit, oil, presidents running their mouths. But those are little speed bumps, right? We're not in that time frame either. Everything isn't all completely rosy. We're not firing on all cylinders, but we're not off on the side of the road broken down either. So we just have to get through this. We have to continue to move forward, and there's nothing right now screaming that this is a longer term thing, and you need to get out.
We just got a bullet grazed us. We're not bleeding out.
There you go. We're going with the bleeding analogy again.
Well, I really like the car on the side of the road better.
Right.
It's a little less vicious.
Well, we get off on tangents, right?
Sure.
I mean, you just and part of the problem is social media. Part of the problem is you turn on the TV and you have to receive what people believe or reporters believe is new information constantly. Well, guess what? There's not new information constantly. The U.S. economy, the world economy is a great, big, huge super tanker out in the middle of the ocean, and it takes a very long time for that to turn and go a different direction than what it is, right? It's not a little runabout and you can change directions just like that. It takes time, and that's why I kind of beat the table. It's like when I invest or when I'm talking to clients, we take a long-term perspective on things, and you don't end up getting whipped around by the things that are in the news today. You know, today's consumer confidence number. So the question is, we're going to put a pin in that. Okay, there it is. It was a little worse than expected. It was actually down from last month. Is that just a pinpoint in the graph, or is that the beginning of a trend? Right, and that's what we have to figure out. You know, was that with everything that's happened here over the last couple months, is that just a pinpoint, or is this actually the beginning of something that we need to pay a lot of attention to? So,
well, in each of the preceding episodes, and hopefully in the coming episodes of Taking Stock, we like to kind of finish up on a positive note. Okay. So what are the good things as we wrap up today's edition of Taking Stock? What are the things that you see particularly that say, hey, that tanker's not even making that long slow turn. It's still it's going to its next destination, which is a good place for all of us investors.
Right. Well, may I have my rose-colored glasses on, but I still, I went to a restaurant last night before the Bengals game. The stadium's packed, right? The restaurant is packed. We go on vacations. The highways are packed. The resorts are packed. The restaurants are packed. It's if I'm going to pick out a positive, I'm not walking into places and going, where is everybody? And you go into Costco, you go into the furniture store, you go into the appliance store. There's people in there, and near as I can tell, they're walking out with stuff. So that's still going on. Now, if you look at 2008, there was a clear, it was obviously things were slowing down. So if I have to take a positive, I still believe we're in good shape, and I'll say it for the 10th time. Stick with the plan for now. And one other comment.
If this is episode number 10, the 10th time, stay with your plan, right?
Yeah. And there's a reason you came up with that plan. There's a reason. I sit down with my clients. We talk. You get to know each other, first of all. So it's very easy for me to say, "Hey, you're 20 years old. You just need to be 100% stock. You need to be 100% small stock, and between A and B, it's going to be wonderful for you, right?" Yeah. But if that 20-year-old can't stand the fact that the market dropped 6% in the last 2 months, and they can't sleep at night because they're in their head they're losing money, right? Then guess what? That's not the plan. The plan has to be different. So that's how you get to know each other. And once you get to know each other and you know where you are and where you're trying to get, that's what you have to focus on. You can't get whipsawed around by these shorter term things.
Right.
Okay. As long as you can sleep at night and as long as it's getting you to where you want to be, it's a good thing. And that's the beauty of being in the business for 35 plus years is I have clients now who are retiring. And in general, we have stuck to the plan. And they are exactly where they want to be now. So they're retiring. They're going where they want to go. They're traveling. They're doing whatever they want to do with their grandkids. Whatever retirement means for that person, playing golf 6 days a week, whatever it is, they're there.
Well, their car's still humming along. It's not over on the shoulder parked and waiting for the tow truck service to come in.
And people are kind of staring at the exits thinking whether they should get off the exit or not, but they're not actually doing it yet. So,
well, sticking with the car analogy, so we should just keep on driving by the exits.
There you go.
Stick with the plan where the destination is out there in front of us.
Yep.
Drive on.
Drive on. That's if you want something positive from me, that's it right there.
Well, and again, I appreciate, and as we talked about on the last episode, because I had just returned from a vacation, it's amazing. The restaurants are full, the vacation places are packed with people, and the football stadiums are filled, the baseball stadiums are filled. People are going out and spending some. I should not short FC Cincy
Oh, yeah.
here in
That's
our
right.
local hometown.
Right.
TQL Stadium is packed, match after match, and the players are down there on the pitch playing soccer.
There's a lot of people spending $300 a seat to watch FCC play Miami a few weeks ago. So
Right.
apparently a lot of people can afford $300
Well, they
seats.
only went to see that one guy.
Well, but they paid $300 for
I
it.
know, right? Otherwise, Miami wouldn't have brought that crowd. But no, they
Right.
would have filled the stadium anyway, just not for $300 a seat.
Right, exactly.
But the bottom line is it's a positive sign. There is despite some lower numbers in the hundreds, consumer confidence appears fairly strong in this current economy,
That's right.
and they're going to drive past the exits and keep moving forward.
And at this moment in time, that's the impression. Yep.
Well, we're at the exit point for
There you go.
today's episode of Taking Stock. We'll be back in 2 more weeks. So, Art Jarvis, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Always enjoy it.
Professor Jarvis.
That's what Jarvis.
Good time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Taking Stock with Art Jarvis. Join us again in 2 weeks for our next edition. Taking Stock with Art Jarvis is a presentation of Loveland Beacon in partnership with Jarvis Global Investments, LLC. Jarvis Global Investments, LLC is a registered investment advisory firm. The advisor is not attempting to furnish personalized investment advice or services during this production. Individuals should fully investigate the appropriateness of any investment before investing. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Investments may lose value.